coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach Breakdown. Something a little bit different this week. Our friends at Veo have asked me to test out the new Veo 3 camera, and they've gone a step further and actually then sponsored the MSC Breakdown. So we're going to take a look at a training session that's recorded using the new Veo 3 camera, which is amazing. A ton of new features. We're going to watch the camera on a training session. So we're joined by Santiago Castillo, who is a U13 and 14 academy coach at Lou City. Highly experienced coach, USSFA, UEFA B. I've asked him to give me a session plan, record it using the Veo 3. If you want the full session breakdown, you can get it on the link below. We're going to talk through the session, talk about the breakdown, and look at it through the lens of Veo 3. If you're looking for information on the Veo 3 as well, you can get it on the link below. Okay, training session from Santiago. Let's go. Santiago, thank you so much for joining us on the Modern Soccer Coach Breakdown, and appreciate you sharing the session and being part of it as well. It was really, really good. I said before we started, a really, really good exercise for me to look at and learn a little bit as well. So I've enjoyed this process. First question I have, looking at the training session, what's the initial objectives going into it?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me, Gary. The objective was just final third. So as part of our club curriculum, it was final third attacking, exploiting space behind the defender's line, the last line. So the objective was in general terms that, and what I was looking specifically is introducing opposite movements. So like if one of the front three players check in for the ball, we need to have at least one midfielder running in behind to exploit that space. So like that was the main objective of the session.
I didn't look at the topic. You sent me the session plan. I didn't look at the topic because I wanted to see if I could, what stage it would be. And sometimes, Santiago, as you know, you can watch a training session for 45 minutes and you can think, what on earth is going on in terms of the topic? I knew initially, first, the warm-up, I knew where you were trying to get through. I thought it was really, really deliberate and very, very difficult in a warm-up situation to bring in and incorporate runs and attacking movement. Talk a little bit about that exercise and where that's come from.
Yeah, the warm-up. So like I like to do passing warm-ups that are not too rigid. So like if I'm going to spend 5 minutes on activation with the ball, I want it to be a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more movement, more freedom. So it's just basically the classic 5 players on a ball in the middle and start simple, just connect a pass to the outside and then take their spot, right? So then there's progression of 1-2s, and then just in relation to this session, I was thinking, how do we get players running a little bit in space, and then the passer also playing the ball in space to recreate that midfield run, or like the ball goes to the winger, midfielder run. So it was just the way I did it, just a quick third-man combination with one of the players, with the player in the middle bouncing it, and then the next person has to run behind with the ball going in the opposite shoulder. So you're mimicking like a ball behind a defender.
When do you think players become really aware of that third man movement?
I would say 13, 14, you can start to introduce it. I'm sure like younger ages, like other players can get it earlier. I just think once you start including a third person or a fourth person, it's a lot more abstract thinking. So I think in that age, you can start to introduce it, but they probably master at 15, 16.
All right, the first key feature of the Veo 3, it has to be the viewing experience. I've used the Veo before. This one, wow, some of the differences. The lenses here have a stabilizer. So even though the tripods might sway in the windy conditions, and you can always hear that as well, we'll talk about the sound. The image is way more stable, allows you to zoom in as well, of course, during the session on the Veo platform, on the Veo website. But because the image is more stable, obviously the quality improves as well. So I was really, really impressed by the quality of the footage consistently as well throughout the video. Again, if you want to check out more on that, get it on the link below. You mentioned there about rigid session design, and sometimes a curriculum can do that there. So how do you balance going off what the team needs versus the game model and curriculum and methodology at the club?
Yeah, the way we have it set up right now, it's kind of flexible. So like we have the topics we want to train, and then the directors might share sessions with the coaches. So I think the best way to balance it is honestly like maybe on a Tuesday, right, the session, all the coaches have to run a specific session that we want to get at. But then on Wednesday, Thursday, maybe they have more flexibility to build their own session. I think that's also for the benefit of the coaches. for our own development as coaches to be able to draw our ideas and execute them and reflect. So I think it's just a balance on the amount of days that maybe you demand certain session versus them creating their session.
It's important for the coach as well, right? To get a little bit of space of creativity and to try different things.
Yeah, if you don't give them that, I don't think they will improve as coaches, or I won't improve as a coach, right? So like if I look back at my mentors, they were always pretty much just guiding, but letting me execute and then giving that feedback needed to improve. So.
Okay, going into the session now, the 4v4 game. Again, I thought the consistency throughout the session was really, really high level. What are you trying to get out of here in terms of the numbers and the spaces as well?
Yeah, so like that 4v4, I kind of adapted it from, you've probably seen it because it became viral on social media, but that might could be old 2v2 plus 1 activity that like players love it. Like I've done it with my team for the last 2 years and the players love it. So, but my thought was in the activity when you have the bumper, it's pretty much combination and third man combination. So there's not a lot of runs behind a defender. So my thought was, if I take the bumper out into the grid and then add a defender, I could start introducing that idea of the 9 checking to the first square, and then the 2 guys that are transitioning can run behind the 9 and behind that center back. So that was just like I've never done that one before. That was my first time doing that activity. If I had to do it again, I would probably do it longer space, so there's more space to run in behind. But yeah, I thought the combination play and some of the actions that I wanted to get out were good. So
I've never seen it before. I really like the 9-7-11 picture where you're trying to unbalance, as you said. That was a objective going into it. Really, really good way to communicate that.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I liked it. I'll probably use it again when we come back to this topic. Just do a longer distance. Because I use the same space that I would use for the 2v2 plus 1, which I think it's great. But I'd probably, if the objective was running behind, probably longer space would benefit the players.
All right, the second feature that I thought was brilliant in the new VO3, it's this wind noise reduction feature that they have. And again, I've used VO before, and I've used mobile recording platforms where if you're on a cold, windy night, you can hear the wind, you can't make out any coaches, and then that can also impact the stabilization. But the VO3 has noise reduction and image stabilization, so that gives you a really, really steady sound and picture. Santiago wasn't mic'd up during his session. He delivered on a windy night. There's 4 other pitches going on at the same time, and I could still hear his coaching points when he stopped it.
Hey, the other thing is I always have to combine. Sometimes what's my best decision? Dribbling, take space, beat someone 1v1, that's an option too. But I need to identify when there's no cover. If it's a 1v1, take the guy on.
Which is incredible for a camera being on a tripod. So huge feature that you can get the audio, you can get the sound, you can hear the coaching, and you can hear some of the players as well. That feature, I think, adds a lot to the quality. Again, if you're interested in finding more, you can get it on the link below. Discovery game. Even terminology, the discovery game, I did look at that there when I went back, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. Is that something that you're quite consistent with in your session layout?
Yeah, I try to use it. So like sometimes when I'm trying to introduce a new topic, I would build an activity, and I took this from Blake, one of my mentors, but like it's a game where I can observe and see what behaviors come out. So, and that one, what I was trying to recreate is like 2v1. I think in the graphics I had it 3v2, but with the numbers, I believe I had to adjust to 2v1. So 2v1 on the first zone, center back steps in and tries to play forward. And as that's happening, I just wanted to see what the behavior was from the 9-7-11. Would they check in? And if they checked in, was someone running in behind? So discovery is more like, hey, here's the situation. So in that one, I just told the front 3 to start high in that third zone. But again, it's not rigid where like, oh, no one checked, so I'm going to give the ball to the other team. It's just more as a reference. And when they were checking into the zone, then I would like to see if someone was running in behind. And then I think from there I started coaching once I realized that the midfielders were staying in the middle and not running in behind to exploit that space. So yeah, just at first it's an activity where I try to see if the situation comes out naturally, and if not, I can start doing like some of the coaching pieces.
Yeah, I really liked. I'm sure you saw it yesterday, or was floating about social media this week with Henri talking about the city shape and the counter pressing. That is something that I saw in the session. Whenever you've got the movement in behind, but you've also got an awareness that you've got a structure underneath the ball as well.
Yeah, and I think this type of activities would help, right? Because once the center back steps in, then the coaching point for the other center back is like, hey, get tight here just so we can defend in advance, so we can just try to anticipate a potential transition. So
Brilliant, brilliant. And then 8v8 game. As you go in there, is that more coaching style? Is that more observation, or what? How are you adapting there?
I think it's a mixed strategy. If it's a day where like I want to, I don't know, maximize the playing time, maybe I stop it less or I limit myself to one stoppage. And then it's also like coaching on the flow, like talking to cues and like, hey, I don't know, Will, Jermaine is dropping in. What can happen next? Just use an example. So like just giving them cues as the game is going, and then just the stoppages needed, or in the break. So on the break, I might send both groups to go meet with each other, and I'll just go listen or give them feedback from anything I observed. So yeah, I think it's a mix of strategies. I don't have like one specific way. It kind of depends on the day, depends on what the players need at the moment.
Yeah, but I noticed that you didn't like. You're not in all the time. Like you're not stopping it after every mistake. It seems that you're holding back for those moments of a break, or is that matching with periodization as well, ball rolling time, or how are you managing all that?
Yeah, so I think like I mean these guys are younger guys, so like from a fitness standpoint, yeah, we're trying to improve how long we can play at a high tempo, for example. So like I don't want to interrupt like the one time we're gonna play in the session, I don't want to interrupt it as much. Where now 8 minutes become six, and then so even though my training plan says 2 times 8 or whatever the case might be, I don't want to bring that down. So yeah, it has to be with that. But as I said, like there's probably other situations where I would stop it if I think something has to be. If I think there's a good opportunity to paint a picture, I might stop it because it's if not, it's just a wasted. It was a wasted moment where like players can relate to that moment of the game that we're trying to improve.
The third feature of the VO3, I think this is unbelievable. This is a match day feature, so we didn't use it for Santiago's training session, but if you're using it for game day, they're going to have a player spotlight. So now AI can detect and separate each player by their shirt number. That'll code it. You can then browse the individual event with the player moments. It'll generate stats, progress charts. It all happens automatically, so you don't need someone to code the video, which I'm sure a lot of coaches will be really, really excited about. It's a VO player spotlight, a brilliant way to introduce analysis, brilliant way to educate around data to players and coaches. Outstanding feature. I'm really excited to see this on the game day feature. So again, you can check it out on the link below for more information. And then the 4v4 plus 4 game. Thought that was interesting at the end. You went from the 8v8 into the game and then went back on that. And I was wondering, is that an exercise that, again, is that something that you always finish up with a bit of finishing or competition, or what's the thought behind that?
Yeah, so obviously, if you think about progression, it doesn't align a lot. It's just more of a recognition that both groups I'm coaching right now, and just actually any team, we're not in front of goal enough. That's kind of been one of my reflections as a coach. Is like we get upset that players don't finish chances or we're not as efficient, but then we look back and see how much time we spend in front of goal. So yeah, it was more of a let's finish with some sort of finishing. I've done 2v1 situations. I've done unopposed crossing. This one was just like me trying something. It's not new. Like I picked it a few years ago. Probably it's been in the past, but it's just how do we put players in finishing situations that replicate the game? So like it was more about not as much as the perfect execution and an unopposed pattern. It was more about sometimes you have to score goals in a tight space and a rebound and a messy situation. So that's what I was trying to create with that 4v4 plus 4.
Brilliant.
And defending, right? You get the opposite, which is how much time do we spend blocking shots or defending your own goal? I think it goes both ways. It's a great activity to work on both.
Would you say like there's a lot of tactics in that session? I think from that a lot of youth coaches would say, oh yeah, there's positional work and there's shape work. Is that something in your philosophy that you think that there has to be a framework in when you're working at that age group?
I would say it was a Thursday, so it also depends on the day of the week. So it was a Thursday, and we had a game Saturday. So for me, that's an opportunity to work on the bigger picture. But if we would have to go back to like a Wednesday or a Tuesday maybe it's more about the individual action. So you might see a lot more of like, okay, once we get in behind, what's the crossing, what's the cutback, what are the runs in the box. So a lot more individual feedback. Then Wednesday might be more of a group or a line in relation to each other, and then Thursday, which was the session I recorded, was more of the bigger picture, bigger groups, because as you notice, like we also have to coach the guys under the ball. So like that's what I use Thursdays for.
Mm. The flow of the session, just to go back to it, I know we talked briefly on it. The flow of the session was a real standout to me because there's not a lot of time that you're spending, even when you do go in and they do have a break. The breaks are in and out so quickly. Is that something that you're deliberately working at? You mentioned about the tempo being high. Is that something that's taken you? Because sometimes when you start coaching, you're in all the time, you don't even realize it. How's that journey been for you to get to that stage of efficiency?
Yeah, I think like going through the licensing with US Soccer, I think that's something that they're very adamant and specific about. But I think it's good because like with these guys, we have 3 times a week with these ages, and then sessions like sometimes clubs will train 1 hour and a half. For us, it's 1 hour and 15. So as a coach, is like if I'm not efficient with the planning and the transitions, like I'm wasting 15 minutes. So for me, like the second session of the day, it's tough because I have to reset, or like sometimes when I want to play an 8v8 with the 5 p.m. session, I can't leave all the cones or dots out there. So yeah, I think for the first session, being as efficient as possible to get the most out of the session. And it's just been a process. Like with the A and the B license, the video reviews are super specific. Like the feedback from mentors in those licenses is super specific. So it's time consuming, but it helps on the long run to run more efficient sessions.
Talk about them. Why a lot of clubs go 1 hour 30 or 2 hours. Why 1:15?
I think it's just like the club structure, like having 4 fields and the amount of teams we have. And also, I think the initial idea, and I wasn't here when the club started, I recently joined, but I think one of the ideas was like making sure that the third session of the day didn't get home too late. Because I think, and look, I've been guilty. Like when I have that last session, it's easy to go over, but the kid has to go to school at 6 a.m. next day. So like if kids are getting home at 11, it's probably not the most beneficial from a holistic standpoint. So I think that's why we kept it shorter, just so kids are not getting home too late once we have to use that third time slot.
You mentioned there about the reflection process and how licensing has helped in that there. What's your process after this? When you switch the camera off, when are you kind of getting your thoughts across that there, or what does that look like?
I think success of a session would be if they apply those actions or either execute those actions in a game. That's how you can measure the success of your session, or in the long run, maybe 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later. So in terms of like the video review of a session, is did the activity create the situations I wanted? That's number one. Is this activity getting to what I want, so I can coach or guide the players? The second one is just you can break down like coaching interventions. So like if I look at the video and I break down one of my coaching interventions is, am I coaching the right players? Am I coaching the players underneath the ball, right? And is my information and the delivery good enough where the players understand and can execute? So like working on the language. And then lastly is the impact of the coaching. So like once I give a coaching point, so I think in this session I think it was our right midfielder a lot on, and I think a lot of the action happened on the right side, but like where one of the tens is running behind once the winger drops and receives the ball. So that would be a situation where I'm maybe measuring like how many times in the game or in the session this player identify that moment.
You've obviously got experience personally in the video analysis space as well, and we talked a little bit before about kind of the progressions in the technology side, and obviously with the VO3 and using this and this here. People talk about analysis and think it's just first team and senior. How big of a role does it play, or should it play, in the youth development process?
I think with the new technologies and with how the platform works, I think it's super important. I think the ability of like giving feedback online, right? Like with Vio, how the Vio is structured, where you can comment and tag the player, and then if you tag a player, they're the only players that can see that feedback. I think it just simplifies your process, where now you don't need to book 5 meetings throughout the week. You can just do it online and provide feedback to each player based on their IDP. So like it's time consuming. So again, like if you have 2 games in a weekend, is it realistic to break down both games before you have to get on the field? Maybe not, but I do think it's important for the players to look back and reflect, and also for us as coaches to be able to paint a picture of what we're trying to get. So like if we're working on this final third as coaches, can we have a few examples from our first team or from like Premier League teams, or like, and I understand that it's not the same game. Like the senior game is not the same game as the U13, but for players to have a visual example of what we're looking for, I think it can help in that learning process.
Brilliant, brilliant. And you've got a bit of experience. You said before we started that you used the initial Vio at St. Louis as well.
Yeah, I think it was one of the first cameras when they first released the product. So we purchased one to try it out. I remember first time we used it was a scrimmage against Chicago Fire, I think in Peoria, in the middle of Illinois, and yeah. So like for where the camera has gone from back that first version to this one, like that I just got the chance to use. I think they're making great progress. Like even small details, like we were talking about the microphone, where now coaches like recording session might not have to use their own microphone to match the audio, right? I think that's huge for licensing, but self-reflection also. I think they built a fan underneath, so like that's probably to prevent overheating in high weather. So you can see that, and the video quality is higher, so you can see that they're making a lot of investment to continue to grow the project, basically.
Santiago, first class. We appreciate you sharing and letting us be part of a training session. It was a really, really cool experience for me. So thanks for doing it, and I would love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. I would be happy to. Like, I think, look, just this part of like having a conversation with you and having someone else review the video and give you feedback or make their comments, that already is going to develop some like a growth mindset. So I would love to do it again for sure.
So there we go, coaches. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Massive thank you for Santiago for giving us an insight into his coaching session and also his philosophy around the game and being open to share that there. Huge, huge, huge thank you to him. If you want the full session and you want the breakdown, you want to look at it a bit closer, you can find it on the link below. And then also a massive thank you to Vio for sponsoring the video and letting us try out the Vio 3 camera. Amazing. Please take a look at it. It's on the link below as well. Check it out. Incredible resource, and some of the new features are unbelievable. So please check that out as well. And thank you to Vio for partnering up with us for it. Thanks again for your support. I will see you next week. Goodbye.